Sullivan had met at CPTSC before and was like, oh, you have to hire this Alex person. She'd be great. So.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it worked out.
I had a job interview outside of Minneapolis in the spring. I can't even remember the name of the school now.
Oh, really?
But I am not from Minnesota, and so I was pretty glad not to get that offer.
Well, that's a thing that they face a lot. Like, they might have had better candidates than me, but I've lived in Minnesota and I love the snow and I wanted to get back here, which I think usually if they hired someone from the South, they're going to leave in a year because it's
right.
The Arctic. But and if you were here in the spring, you saw some of that then.
I was there in March. So I saw some. I mean, I live in Vegas most of the time, so it was a big change.
Right.
Even in March.
For sure. Well, Sam was having some trouble with her. She texted me that she's going to have to Skype in from her phone.
Uh-oh. Will that work?
Yeah, we've done it before.
On Hangouts?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it's not ideal, but...
I should have asked you how this works. You guys have more experience than we do with making this happen.
Yeah. It's easy. The glitches you can't, like, plan for, so there's nothing you can really do about that.
Yeah, I've decided that probably the biggest qualification for doing this type of work is to be patient.
Absolutely.
That's a hard one, though.
I'm dealing with that with my students because the metro population is mostly non-traditional students, so it's a lot of people who are returning back to school after working for 20 years or something, and I know they accuse the millennial generation of not having patience, but when technology doesn't work, their patience just like goes out the window. They're like, it doesn't work. I don't understand. It should work.
Right.
And it's like, no, it's okay. It always doesn't work. You just have to like work through it.
I have the same student population that you do. I'm very familiar with that. It's frustrating, but also so exhilarating when they finally kind of give over to learning how to use technology that way.
Yeah, it's like that high. You get like a high from it. Like when you have a technological problem and you work through it, and it's like, oh, sweet. Like passing a level on Candy Crush or something. It's like, yes.
That is what it's like. Good analogy. Yeah.
You like get them addicted to technology that way.
What's great is I feel the rush too, even when it's the student who's making the progress.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. Harley, I went ahead and tweeted out about episode 1.2.
Oh, well, I didn't see that yet, but I've been in meetings all morning, so.
It's barely morning here.
Yeah, I suppose so. It's lunchtime here.
Mm. Do you want me to text Sam? You invited her, right?
I did. I used the notyourmothersgamer@gmail.
Oh, that's probably why. So you're probably going to want to use her Samantha Blackman one.
Okay.
That's what she's on right now, it looks like, on my screen.
I don't have that one in here at all. Oh, but there she is. All right, thank you. We'll try that. Okay. I've been using the other address.
We share that between like 6 people, so we usually don't do anything on it.
Got it. Okay.
Although it will be interesting to see if she Skypes in or whatever from her phone.
Is everything okay? She's not in an emergency situation or anything, is she?
No, she's not in an emergency situation. Her text was indecipherable, though, so I think flustered is more the appropriate.
Oh, dear.
It was, like, cut off halfway through and was missing verbs. And I was like, oh.
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, if necessary, I mean, we could... Oh, there she is.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, I think I got it to work.
You didn't have to use your phone?
Yes, I did. Because I came to campus without a laptop today.
I was trying to figure out what your text meant. I could not understand it.
And when you said that was almost indecipherable, and I went back and looked at it, and I was like, oh my God, she's right, it was.
Because you were like, I can't, I have to use my phone because quick. I was like, what? Yeah.
All right.
Well, I'm here.
We're
Well,
glad
that's
you're
great.
here. Thanks for coming, Sam. It's nice to meet you, by the way.
You too.
Do we not get to see your video? I want to see your face.
Hold on.
That's the only way I can tell when you start getting mad at me.
Hey.
Yay.
Hi.
Okay, no more video.
Now you won't know if she's mad, Alex.
I know.
Uh-oh.
Just wait until
Oh, she'll know.
I'll be able to tell now.
Well, I won't know. That's
Mhm.
great. I hope you won't be mad at me.
Maybe
Ah.
we do some super brief informal introductions real quick.
That sounds great. Why don't you start?
All right. Well, I'm Harley. I'm a third-year PhD student at University of Louisville.
Hi, Harley.
Hi, Harley.
Hello.
I'll go next since I guess I sort of made this happen. I'm Courtney Danforth. I am newly tenured this year. The College of Southern Nevada in Las Vegas, and I think this is like my 7th year with Kairos, something like that. It's been ages. So that's me.
Hi.
Hi.
Yay. I'll go. I'm Alex Lane. I'm an assistant professor at Metropolitan State University, and Sam and I started Not Your Mama's Gamer together, which I think is why we're here today. So yay.
Yay.
Oh, then that means I have to go. Well, I'm Samantha Blackman, and I am an associate professor at Purdue University. And yeah, Alex and I started Not Your Mama's Gamer together.
Back when I was your lowly grad student.
Way back when.
How long ago was that?
3 years, almost 4.
3.5.
4 in
Yeah.
January. It'll be 4 in January. Yeah.
Well, happy birthday coming up, I guess.
I know. We just had our 87th episode.
That's amazing.
Or 2 nights ago. It was pretty crazy.
That's a real accomplishment.
I'll have to drive down to Lafayette to do the 100th episode with you.
Yes, you will.
We're
And then we'll have
celebrating.
to have a designated driver.
I'll just bike down.
Drunk biking doesn't sound terribly safe either, I have to say.
True, but you can use it as kind of a walker towards the end of the night if you need to.
That is true.
Or we could just do it at my and then solve all those problems.
That's what I really wanted you to offer. I was just trying to sound pathetic, so you would offer that.
We may have some questions for you in the future about longevity and sustainability. So
Ooh.
we're preparing for our 3rd episode. So.
Oh, great.
But the fact that there's more than one to me is like half the battle. Replicating, so that's okay.
It's half. There's so many battles. It's maybe half of one battle, but you have more battles.
Oh, yeah.
Many more battles.
Well, that's depressing.
I don't know. Not really. It's wonderful. Samantha?
It is absolutely wonderful. Yeah.
The longevity is an issue. Well, I'll wait till you ask the questions, I guess. So, all right.
Before we get too deep into the questions, does everybody have a recording system set up on their own end, or?
You know what? I do not.
I
Okay.
don't either, but this is already recording.
I am recording it as a Google Hangout, so we will have the full conversation there. We've been doing multi-track recordings for most of our interviews, so Harley's and our tracks will be separate for the moment, and I guess we'll pull you guys off of the Google Hangout if that's all right.
Yeah.
I'm also taking my line out into another recording track, so
Okay.
doubly covered.
All right. Super. That sounds okay then. And everybody's hearing and seeing what they need to be hearing and seeing?
Yes.
Yep.
Great. Thanks for coming, you guys. I really appreciate you taking the time.
No problem.
All right, Harley, you want to take a warm-up question?
Yeah, we thought we'd start with a couple of warm-ups just to get in the mode of talking, get comfortable and everything. And one of the questions we found that's really fun to ask people is, if your current profession were not available to you, what other career might you like to pursue? Or what else could you see yourself doing?
I'll let Alex go first. I know what my answer is.
There's two things that I would be if I wasn't a professor of technical communication and professional writing. That would be a bartender. I've always wanted to be a bartender. I feel like it's the best people watching you can possibly get. Or a lawyer. I took the LSAT last spring with sort of the idea that I would be able to. There's a couple hybrid programs here in Minneapolis with the idea that within the next few years I'd start taking some courses and do some corporate employment law stuff, because that's sort of where my passion is with my work. So that's, I think, what I would be doing if tenure positions no longer existed tomorrow. Bartender on the side to make money to put myself through law school.
That's a classic.
I think so.
How about you, Sam?
Well, it would be one of two things. I would either run a local yarn shop, or I'd probably put my tech skills to use for evil instead of good and go games industry.
You would really do that to yourself?
Yeah, I think I would.
Oh, you'd have high therapy bills.
Yeah, probably. No, I wouldn't.
Well, she'd have the money to pay them, though. So.
That's true. That is true.
What's your yarn interest, Sam? Are you crochet, knit?
I'm a knitter.
I am a knitter also.
Yeah, see?
I'll stop there.
Would this local yarn mean that you only cater to local people, or that you gather your own fibers from local animals?
More that I only cater to local people. When they say local yarn shop, that's generally what they mean, like a small business. It's funny because one of my friends here in town does own the local yarn shop, and when she has like kid activities or vacation, she calls upon her friends, because she doesn't have employees really, to cover the shop. So I do work at the local yarn shop, as I like to say, from time to time, but I don't actually get paid. So, well, I don't know if that counts.
Well, the reason I'd ask is we've gone out to a local forest where they had a bunch of different artisans out doing their things, and they were spinning yarn, and as people were asking questions, they're explaining the process, and somebody asked what type of animal that they were spinning it from, and she said, well, this is from sheep's wool, but you can spin from just about anything. She said, I made an Afghan from a dog. So,
yeah,
really,
people do that, and I think that's weird.
Right. Yeah, I do too. Well, maybe then if we segue into one more warm-up question, playing off the bartender, we also like to ask people their drink of choice. And that can either just be universal, or we also ask a few people their rhetorical drink of choice, what helps them when they think or study about lofty things. So
Sam and I know this very well about each other, I think. But you can go ahead first, Sam.
Well, you could tell each other's if you prefer.
Sam's is a sneaky, which is a southern drink that has iced tea flavored vodka with lemonade. And we had it for the first time on a trip to Atlanta, right? At Sweet George's Juke Joint. And we each had two of them, and felt pretty amazing afterwards, I'd say. That's Sam's favorite drink.
Okay, so Alex is going to be hard because it's usually scotch with ice and Sour Patch Kids.
It's Sour Patch Kids. That's true.
In the drink or just with the drink?
Just with the drink. It sets off the flavor.
I've never heard that one before.
It's normal. If you tried it, you would like it.
I'm not saying I wouldn't. I'm just saying I've never heard of it before.
We know this about each other well because on every one of the 87 episodes, we've had a What Are You Drinking segment. So for the past 3.5 years, every other week, we've talked about drinking.
I noticed that. I also noticed that, and I like this. You start off by asking, what have you been playing? What games are you playing? So let's try that. What are you playing?
Oh, this
Destiny.
is easy. Destiny. Yeah.
Destiny's amazing. It's this new game. It's a what even is it? I don't even know. It's like a first-person shooter, adventure, RPG, social MMO, like open world. It's crazy. It's got everything, and we're completely addicted to it. In fact, last night we didn't get to play, and I feel a little on edge today. What's that?
It's gorgeous too. It's beautiful,
It's
really
so fun, and we have a team of 3 of us that play, and the other person couldn't come last night for a reason we never really got the reason, but regardless, we couldn't come. So me and Sam were just kind of sitting there jonesing.
I hope you get another chance soon.
I'm hoping that tonight it happens.
We might need to start other characters and just do a fire team of 2 because I think our other person is out for the weekend, but I'm certainly in. I have no plans.
Well, he's one level over us, so if we just level up tonight, we'll be safe.
I think he's 1 level over you.
Well, fine. Then now if I just level up, we're safe.
We'll see. We can get ahead of him. We can catch up.
Yeah.
There's certain. What about platforms? What do you guys like or dislike?
We mostly play on the Xbox One, or at least I do. I don't have a PS4 yet, so I can't speak to that, but Sam can. But I never played a PS3 much. I think like D3 was the only thing I played on it. I mostly used it for like a Netflix streaming machine and a Blu-ray player. Yeah. So I didn't buy the PS4 yet, but I play a lot of computer games too. We do like Civ Online, or with like big groups of us, or anything through Steam, WoW, Hearthstone, stuff like that.
I'm terrible because I have like no impulse control. So I tend to buy every console that comes out. Yeah, I have poor impulse control.
Multiple.
So, yeah. So I play on Xbox One, PS4, PS3, 360, all the handhelds, and a couple of PC games, yeah.
How do you keep them all straight? I can't imagine.
I have an insane number of consoles in my house.
30.
Yeah, it's about 30. And I just play whatever, But it gives me the ability to, when a game is not cross-platform, it gives me the ability to play with other people that I would play with. Like Destiny's not cross-platform. I mean, it is the game itself, but you can't play with people on other platforms. So in a case like that, I can say, okay, well, I'm going to play with like Alex and Ricky on Xbox One, and I may be playing with Charlotte and Sarah on the PS4. So it gives larger groups of people, which comes in handy for research purposes as well, especially if you're playing with other games researchers. That's going to be my excuse. Yeah.
Valid. I like it.
I buy it, but now I want to know what types of things you uncover research-wise by working with different groups on your different platforms, different consoles.
What types of things I uncover? Well, it's interesting. It depends on what reasons we're playing for. Usually when we're playing, unless we're specifically working on a research piece at the time, people are just kind of thinking to themselves about what's going on. And so we tend to just be playing through and trying to do the best that we can in terms of just playing the game. And then actually I wrote a piece about this for NYMG last week when Alex and Ricky and I were playing Destiny, and I was pointing out some things about gender inequity in the game. And Alex kind of screamed at me, "Don't tell me my game is sexist." So it's pretty interesting is that we just kind of play through as gamers, but there is that constant critical lens that's up. Um, but some people don't. Some people, and I'm not saying Alex does this. I'm just giving her crap. But some people don't necessarily want that lens to be up all the time. But for me, unfortunately, it is.
Well, and that's part of the thing too. Like when you talk to people when they first start getting into games research, they do it because they love games, and it's like a really complex relationship to try to sort through. I think Sam, you've done it better than I have because you've been doing it for longer. But you have to sort of balance your love for the game while constantly being aware of sort of the horrible things happening behind the scenes and terrible representation or stereotyping or whatever that's happening in the game, and like it's difficult to enjoy something that's awful. And I'm thinking about this because we just did a guilty pleasure games segment on Wednesday where we talked about like sexist, racist, awful games that people still kind of sneak back and play once in a while because they love the game. And it's like a weird, you have to just sort of accept both while you're playing. Like you're loving this game and it's awful, and what can you do? So you go do stuff like Not Your Mom's Gamer or whatever, and talk about it and provide a space to be critical about it, I guess.
Yeah, but then there are games that you can't play. We also did a segment where we talked about games that we couldn't play, that just because of that critical lens, they were so horrible that you just had to quit. And there's like this running joke about me and Red Dead Redemption. As I was playing that, I played that game just to for fun, quote unquote. But there was kind of a snippet of dialogue that went on during a side mission, even that was not a part of the main narrative. But it was so horrible that I rage quit the game and never went back to it. And this was probably the first or second play session that I had with the game. It was a side mission where as John Marston, you're walking around, and you walk upon basically a prostitute from the local bar or local brothel. Being attacked in the street by a bar patron, and it's clear that he is about to rape her, and he is screaming at her. She's yelling, he's screaming at her, "Shut up, bitch, before I cut you a new hole." And it was just so jarring, and so kind of disturbing that I quit the game and I never went back to it. So, so sometimes, you're able to be objective and have that critical lens on, but then sometimes who you are as an individual and your own kind of moral and or kind of critical sensibilities will definitely stop you from playing a game.
We did an episode about that, I think, when you guys were playing Bravely Default. So Bravely Default's an interesting game because it has a bunch of young teens, and in the Japanese iteration, they're, I think, 13, right?
Yeah, they're really young, yeah.
They're super young, and they're, overly sexualized, and there's all sorts of, disgusting stuff that's happening to them in this game. And in the Americanized version, they make sure to say they're 18. But it's the same characters, right? And so, I tried to, play, but, it just grosses me out, way too much. But a bunch of people, that's not where their threshold was, right? So they still were able to play the game, but there's certainly ones that we've played some in your classes, Sam, in the past that just people you can't even participate because it's so awful. But
yeah, and it's been intentional. I mean, this has been stuff that I brought to class. I'm like, okay, you guys have to try this because
Custer's Revenge comes to mind.
Yes. Yeah, so there are things, yeah.
It seems like that's one huge difference between, just for instance, games and movies, and it's the participatory role of playing. I have 3 boys who are 11, 13, and 15, and it's really different in terms of these are the movies that we think maybe you can handle or not handle, versus these are the activities that we want you to be rewarded in while you're playing these games.
I just did a talk last night about to a group of students who that focused on sort of the reason why games are a different medium than TV and movies. When it was a talk about games for change, so it was about creating positive change. But one of the main tenets was games make you complicit in the narrative. They force you to play along and be active in it in a way that movies and TV don't really push you to do. So we're playing games like the PETA game, like Cooking Mama, right? Like it's forcing you to be complicit in like the torture of these animals and killing of these animals, and they make it like really disgusting, and that's their way of convincing you. But I think you're 100% on. Like the way it forces you to be party to whatever narrative it's giving you is one of the reasons games are so complex and so persuasive and so engaging if it's in a positive way.
Yeah, and I think you're absolutely right. Oops, sorry. I think you're absolutely right. I mean, and that was one of the things that in my minority rhetorics seminar, well, it would have been 18 months ago. I don't want to say forced. I asked my class to play Bastion.
Oh yeah.
And they were like, well, can I watch someone play it, or can I watch a Let's Play? And I said, no, everyone has to play it. And I made sure everyone played it. And a couple of people got really angry at me once they had finished the game. And the reason that they were angry is because the game makes you the colonizer in this case. And they felt that I had forced them to colonize a group of minority peoples in this game, and it was that interaction, that actual interactivity, that made them feel like they were actively doing it, and that was a real problem for them.
That's what worries. That's what worries me about games, though, is because people don't take them seriously. I mean, they're taking them more so seriously, but because they're just toys or they're just things for little boys or whatever. There's not that critical attention on them, and so things like that sort of go unquestioned and unchecked. And now it's the biggest entertainment industry in the United States, and it's saying these messages, but we don't have enough people talking about what it's really saying. I mean, we have the ratings on it on like each game, but I mean, I think we could agree that that's not nearly enough critical attention being paid to them, right? About these things because that's emotional stuff. Forcing someone to become the colonizer to participate in this game is emotional, and people need to be talking about what that means and what that says about society and all that kind of stuff,
Is there much scholarship on gaming coming from the industry itself, or do you think most of it is still happening more academically?
There's some, but it's mostly narrative-based, right? Like Coster stuff and like my life as a night elf priest, stuff like that. It's pretty narrative.
Okay, well, she's an anthropologist.
Well, that's academic anyway, yeah.
Yeah, she's an anthropologist. There's not published stuff. There's some interesting stuff. There's work being done, but they don't necessarily publish it. But you hear it at these awesome talks at like GDC. Where people talk about things like race and diversity and sexism, not only in the industry but in the games themselves, and kind of the connection between the two. But it doesn't get published, so it's not public knowledge, and it almost makes perfect sense that it's not. I mean, if we look at what's going on with Gamergate,
right.
There would be so much backlash if most of what gets said at GDC kind of behind closed doors among kind of industry professionals and academics were to make it to mainstream. I think all hell would break loose.
For sure. They're the cherished world that that the Gamergate folks are so afraid of being taken away from them and exploited by social justice warriors. Would 100% it would the community would burn itself to the ground, I think.
Yeah,
might not be the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, and I don't consider myself a gamer per se, though I play and follow a little bit. But I have just been amazed lately at the heat, I guess, and not just with Gamergate, but the death threats from releasing patches to modify weapons in Call of Duty, and I loved Game Fez. I thought that was a fantastic, one of the best indie games I've ever played. And then to hear that the Fez 2, he's just dropping out because he can't stand the people pushing him to finish. I don't think I've ever seen that kind of anger, heat, and vitriol from the consumers of a product towards the creators in any other industry. You think it seems really unique to me.
It's unique and depressing and overwhelming and stuff me and Sam talk about every day. And it's just, I remember just like having to on my dissertation doing research for 6 months. I think it was like the worst 6 months of my life when I was reading the stuff that's happening in the gaming industry. I don't even know what to say. It's mind blowing the amount of hate and attacks, and they do it towards developers for sure, but anyone who they see as threatening what their view of what gaming of pure gaming, what it should be, is absolutely threatened, death threats. And Nita Sarkeesian had stuff brought to her house. Zoe Quinn had stuff. I had her parents called, and and this goes all the way back to for years and years, any women who worked in programming and spoke up about issues like this, like Kathy Sierra, and I was just reading some stuff today even about like GitHub employees, women that having this stuff happen to them, it's completely out of control.
Yeah.
And we've talked a lot about why, but it seems like whenever people talk about why there's so much anger there, it just goes into sort of apologist and ignoring the implications, because people want to say, oh, well, they're just not socialized well. Gamers don't have social skills, and they this and that, and it's like, I don't know, when you're sending detailed rape threats to somebody's mailbox, like real mailbox at their house, I don't know. The questions of why seem less important as opposed to what we do with it. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, and that's problematic. Well, one, because as a population, demographically, gamers are getting older, right?
31 is the average age.
Yeah, exactly. And this is not something that has been the norm before, right? Even when the gamer population was younger and quote unquote more immature, or should have been more immature, this is not something that's going on. It's a cultural shift, but people don't want to say that this is a problem with larger culture. They want to blame it on immaturity and games and gamers, because gamers aren't socialized well and so on. But the truth is there's a larger cultural shift with older people.
Yep.
That's I guess the uncomfortable truth that people don't want to deal with.
Yeah, it's easy to say that it's 17-year-old boys doing it, but the truth is they only take up like 18 and younger boys only take up like 15% of the gaming industry right now, or maybe it's 17%. But regardless, it's not a big number. And you could say, well, they're the most vocal, but I think, Sam, I think you're right. It's not them. Average gaming age is 31, and I think that's sort of where a lot of this is coming from. People who guys who grew up with games saw it as this kind of nostalgic ideal, and now see it getting taken away. Like you see the people who harassed Zoe Quinn weren't kids. It was her ex-boyfriend and a contingent of people on 4chan and online that joined him, right? That certainly wasn't kids. So, and I doubt it was 15-year-old boys harassing Kathy Sierra out of programming, right?
Right.
So that took a depressing turn.
Well, let's maybe cheer things up slightly, I hope. Do you use gaming in your classroom? Presumably many of your students fall into this younger category of gamer, I'm assuming, let's say. So do you use gaming in your classroom, and do you see any of this heat or danger do you covet it, or do you promote it in your classroom, or is it easy enough to ignore?
I'll go first because I know Sam will have way more to say about this than me. I'm teaching sort of my first class of games right now. I'm doing a media studies class that's children, adolescents, and the media, the culture of video games. And we're studying video games, particularly as they pertain to children. So I'm having them, like their first assignment was to do a video game review. So they're playing games, and then each week is a different sort of hot topic. That's how I arranged it. I'm not, because I really think, and a lot of my and Sam's work have been to say, you can't study games without studying the problematic nature of it. This is why Jane McGonigal, who is awesome, had this amazing TED Talk about how games can change the world for the better, but how it's difficult to sort of accept that because gaming is not available to everybody in the same way because of the horrible harassment issues and things like that. It needs to be sort of worked out first before it's this like great medium that can go change the world. So we do like sexism one week, we do violence one week, we do educational possibilities one week. So that's how I organize it, like these hot topics each week that sort of cover the gambit, and then they play games along with it. But at Metro, I don't have any equipment yet, so I can't have them like sit down and play games with me because we don't have so I'm trying to get it, but I know Sam does all sorts of stuff with games in her classrooms because I've taken those classes.
Yeah, well, she's right. I do all kinds of stuff. In terms of graduate classes, they're usually games-based classes, like game theory classes, that are specifically people who are interested in studying games. But then occasionally, like my minority rhetoric seminar, I will bring in things in a class that is not a games class and say, okay, this is going to be an easier, more interactive, more fun way of us getting at this and getting kind of closer to this subject. And it usually works pretty well that way. And it's funny because we were talking about invention in my intro to comp theory class this semester, and I brought in a bunch of iPads with Scribblenauts loaded and made them play Scribblenauts to think about invention. So I do it a lot at the graduate level, but we usually don't get as much heat at the graduate level because they're more invested in games if it's a games course, and that's kind of what they're there for, is that analytical bit. But recently I've been developing kind of an undergraduate curriculum in game studies in the department. And so I've been dealing a lot more with undergraduates. And I've been pleasantly surprised because a lot of the undergraduates that are taking the courses are not humanities majors, but we have lots of CS people and CGT people. So they're coming from the School of Technology. And I don't know why, and I don't want to say, it's because I'm teacher, because that's not usually the case, is that, people don't have a problem challenging the teacher. But they're very receptive to kind of conversations about what goes on in and around games. And some of them, they don't tell me what they've done in the past, but you can tell from conversations, and they will say outright sometimes even, that they have not thought about certain things as being problematic or as being issues beforehand, right? And it's just kind of being in this environment where, there are, 12, 14, 18 other people talking about this kind of in real theoretical ways and not just slinging around racial epithets in online, that it makes sense that these things are issues. So I think it kind of diffuses some of the heat, as we would say. because it gives them a safer space to talk about it. And I never call them out and say, "Oh, so you do this online," um, but just kind of giving them that space to hear what others have to say, and even not have like like individual cases pointed out, but looking at things broader, more thematically, and kind of uh, over a larger span of time, gives them some history behind it too. Uh, and I think that that's been the most interesting thing to watch, switching from working with graduate students in game studies to working with undergraduate students.
In your teaching, does the subject matter focus on the game most of the time? Do you ever use the games to illuminate other rhetorical or pedagogical elements, so that the game is in service to something else, or what's sort of that balance there that you employ?
Do I ever do that? Yes, I do it, not as frequently as I would like, probably. But yeah, I bring games into other non-games courses. But I teach a lot of games courses right now. One, because we've got a pretty good base of graduate students who are interested in game studies or are writing dissertations that cover games, or master's students who are writing theses that cover games. So yeah, I do a lot of games courses, and then with working on the undergraduate curriculum, you know, it's not a terrible thing to teach lots of games courses, but that's where I'm at right now. So.
One of the things that I've noticed too is a shift in the way people use games educationally is, like, it started out as, and I still see this in like C's presentations a lot. Sam, you'll back me up on this, where it's like, no, it's cool, we can use games because it will illuminate Aristotle's blah blah blah, or we can use games because it will teach this thing. And one of the shifts that I've been really excited about, that's happening slower than I'd like, but it's definitely happening, is the shift to, no, we can teach about games because games are a really important thing that are happening in our culture and our society right now. So I think that that using games to sort of illuminate these other things, I think that's on the downswing, which I'm quite happy about, though other people might not be. It's still useful to talk about them in terms of persuasion and rhetorical tropes and things like that. That, of course, is super useful. But I think games in and of themselves as persuasive medium are worth studying, and people are seeing them as worth studying now. Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let's shift things a little bit and talk about the issue of access in gaming. You talked a little bit, we were talking about heat, about the safety question when it comes to access, but there's certainly issues of economics for access and other issues too. So tell us a little bit about that.
Well, Alex, yeah, I can talk to that. Well, Alex was just saying, like, she's at a new job. She's being asked to teach classes about games, or she is teaching classes about games, but she doesn't have equipment. And it's an interesting thing because, like, I found myself, I've been doing it for a while, and what's happened for me is that I've found different ways to accumulate equipment. That sounds pretty sketchy. It's not sketchy at all, no. I found different ways to accumulate. Yeah, I know. I found different ways to accumulate equipment, just in terms of writing small grants for equipment, or using my own research funds to buy equipment, and then even if I buy new equipment at home. For example, when I went from the Xbox 360 to the 360 Slim, when I went from the original PS3 to the new PS3, I even cycle that old equipment into the labs so that there are multiples of certain things in the labs. And we have backups in case things break. So access is a real issue, but we do have that lab space. So we also have space for, students who don't have access to the equipment at home to come into the lab and say, I'm going to spend a couple of hours in the lab playing these games, or I'm going to, spend all night in the lab playing these games. And even in certain situations when it's been over break or if people have to do focused research, it's been loaned out equipment, primarily the graduate students, to finish their research. So, yeah, access is a real issue.
Well, and I think, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, I think access looks a little bit different in gaming, like you're talking about, because so last night I was doing this talk to these students, and this woman she's 45 from Somalia, said she'd never played a video game in her whole life, and I had her go up and play the Cooking Mama game in front of everybody, and that game is so accessible, you click a mouse and drag, and it has good enough directions that she had no trouble playing it. Or you have students who maybe don't have a computer but have an Xbox, right? I said earlier, I don't know if we were recording or not, but my student population is older. I think the average age is 40 or something. So their accessibility issues with gaming takes a little bit different form because they're just not familiar with technology. But I don't know, it seems like there's so many accessible games. I have this woman who's oh, I've never played a video game in my life. She plays Candy Crush Saga every day. She just doesn't consider it a video game, right? She'll play for 3-4 hours a day. And she talks about, she's it's almost like a little high I get. That's why I said that earlier. She's it's almost like a little high I get every time I pass a level I've been working on for 2 weeks or something, right? And so I think as far as the way games are programmed, they're for people who don't have the experience with technology, I think they're doing a pretty good job. Now, games like Destiny would not be accessible, but there's at least something for most people. But I think ability is where accessibility gets super tricky in games. You look at Mark Barley and Able Gamers, you have to have good dexterity, good eyesight, sometimes good hearing to be able to play, and that's where accessibility gets really problematic in my experience with my students. Go ahead.
Well, there's another thing. I mean, and to think about it also in terms of economics, to think about it also in terms of, especially with games like Destiny or a lot more games that require you to be online,
yes.
Not to play the thing, but just to verify right at the beginning of the game, and then you don't have to be online anymore. We have this issue. We were joking about this because we were joking about our Destiny addiction. We have Comcast, and my modem I have to replace at least once a year. It's kind of a funny joke, right? When we're doing the podcast, it's once a year my modem will go out, and then we'll be scrambling to get recorded because Sam needs a new modem. Well, my modem went out last week, or no, this week, and was one night earlier this week, and so Ricky and Alex were messaging me, and I was my internet keeps going down every 5 minutes. I cannot play. And then so they just kept talking, and I wanted to play more and more. And of course, I have to play with my fire team. I have to support my fire team. I'm not addicted. It's a support thing. Understand this. So, and the thing was, I said, okay, fine. I'm gonna play. I'm gonna set up a hotspot. So I set up a hotspot on my phone and played Destiny for 3 hours. And then, of course, I get the warning email that from my phone company. It's okay, you just used a shitload of data. And I'm okay, guys, because I'm going to have a $300 phone bill next month. But just that is the kind of access that is available to me for very specific reasons, very specific socioeconomic reasons that won't be available to others, right? And not even, that is an extreme case of me setting up a high population. That's, but the thing is that what if I didn't have internet at all? Then I would never be able to play Destiny. And there are lots of other games, a lot of EA games that I would never play because I can't connect to the internet even at the beginning of a gaming session to verify the authenticity of my software, right? So therefore, I can't play the game. So there are all kinds of interesting issues and nuances with access when you start talking about accessing games.
The online all the time trend is one that I hope dies pretty quickly, because it really sets apart and makes it difficult for people who don't have that dedicated internet, fast internet all the time to play these games. I think it's really a big problem, and hopefully it seems like there's a ton of backlash to it. But if you make a game that you need to be in a party or in a group to be able to even play, like, it's just, games like Sims or SimCity, like SimCity particularly, you had to be online all the time. That's an EA game, which made no sense, right? Like, I guess it makes sense to be online if you're going to play a game like WoW, but I really hope that they've kind of learned their lesson, because there was huge backlashes to that. So I hope that doesn't continue to be an issue.
Well, we want to be really respectful of the hour that we asked you to contribute, and we're right up near the end of that. I am really dying to know, though, when you both got into games. Was this a childhood thing? Was this recent?
You're gonna make me tell how old I am.
Indeed.
Well, I'll answer this question first. I'm gonna jump in and answer first. Gosh. Okay, so my first game was, and I don't think anybody else is old enough to remember these, was the old single game handheld blips on the screen sports games that were like Coleco games.
Mm-hmm.
So the first one, I got one of the first ones in 1976.
That was a long time before I was even born there, Samantha.
Yes, it was. I got my first one in 1976, and I had two cousins that were about the same age, and one of us got baseball, one of us got hockey, and the other got football. So we were able to, exchange between the three of us. But that is actually how I learned the fundamentals of sports, as well as my kind of initiation into games. And I haven't stopped since then. Yeah. So, good Lord.
I think I was kind of primed to be a gamer forever, because I was born in '85, and that was right when the games started exploding. We had a Nintendo. As soon as I could hold a controller, I was able to play Nintendo. My family was obsessed with Macs, so we had like the super old Apples that had Myst, and that was probably in the early '90s though. Like Myst, and we had these games like Realms and these like shareware games that people who just loved Macs would make, and then made it only available to Mac, so that people would buy those. And yeah, I remember what I would do, because originally the Nintendo was bought for my brother, of course, I think, which is a lot of women's stories in games. And I would sit and watch him and his friends play, and they would struggle through levels. And I guess that started my critical looking at games, because I would watch them play and I would watch their mistakes. And then I would get on and I would play it like flawlessly, right? So everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, that's amazing!" But really, I'd just been sitting there watching for 2 hours, and was able to sort of take a different approach to it. And then, of course, my parents then started buying me game systems and buying me games, because I obviously loved it, going to pinball arcades and all sorts of stuff like that. So it was sort of like destined, I think, destinied.
I'm always interested in that. I fall right in between you two in that I cut my teeth on the old Sierra games, so Police Quest, Space Quest, and all that, Super Boulder Dash on the PC Junior,
Sure.
And all of that. So I'm always curious about that. Courtney, any last questions or comments from you?
Well, I want to invite both of you to think about, is there anything that you want to tell to KairosCast listeners who are gamers to an extent, rhetoricians for the most part. What do you want to? We're glad to welcome you to the KairosCast network. And what would you like listeners to know about you and your show?
I would say that, well, any discussions of technology, anybody who's interested in technology and sort of the issues, scholarly and culturally, issues that are happening with technology, I think it would be a good podcast for you to watch and listen to, because we do talk about games, specific games, particularly for the first half hour of the show, but we talk about really broad issues, that I think would really apply to anybody who's doing stuff with technology critically. And I think out of our conversations, there's a broader implication for how we can keep ethics in mind and keep people in mind and keep culture in mind while we're talking about these very computational things that we want to sort of pretend fell out of the sky as these amazing pieces of technology, but really are indicative of our society and influence our society. And so I think our conversations really would be broadly applicable to people, even if they're not solely interested in games. Sam, I saw you cut out there for a minute, but did you hear what she asked? Oh. I think we lost her.
Just a picture, huh?
Yeah. But I would say that's what my hope would be. Oh, good. We can hear you. Did you hear her question?
Yeah, my call got dropped.
Yeah.
I did not.
Good. Then I get a second chance to ask it better this time.
Yay!
My question was, is there, let's see, knowing who the audience for Kairos is there anything that you would like to say to those readers and listeners about your podcast and about gaming and rhetoric?
Wow, that's a really good question, and I would say
I gave a brilliant answer to lead you into this, so sorry you missed that.
Oh, I must have. I'll have to hear it. I'll have to hear it in the actual interview later.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple of things that I would say, kind of to the audience, is about our podcast, and just remember that in addition to the podcast, there's also a blog where we post daily about games and issues of diversity or just games and game reviews. So there's fun stuff and there's serious fun stuff. I won't separate serious from fun. But about the podcast, other than the fact that you have kind of a bevy of brilliant women talking about games, but we talk about important issues in games, and it's a diverse kind of span in terms of the issues in games. So it's not just games and feminism, but we talk about games in education, we talk about games in economics, we talk about games in a whole kind of range of things. So we like to think that there's a little bit of everything for everybody. And I think that's an important thing, because most people go, oh, it's games, I don't play games, or that's something I don't have time for, but there's lots of stuff there that I think can be useful to people who are not even gamers. Or don't play games. I won't say are not gamers, because a lot of people don't consider themselves gamers, because gamers has become a bad word to some people lately. But I think that there's a lot of stuff. And in terms of games and rhetoric, I think rhetorically, one of the things that we need to focus on, and one of the things that we need to pay close attention to, is that rhetorically games are important.
Yes.
Right? Games are here, and as an entertainment medium, are now we kind of, in terms of revenue, have exceeded film, have exceeded kind of audio entertainment in terms of music. They're not going away, and it is something that our children, our students, our colleagues, our friends, our family members are all engaging with on a regular basis, and that is why games are so important rhetorically, is that we have to be able to figure out what games are saying, what games are teaching, and
and how to deal with those things, negative and positive. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of the answer that I have.
Right on. Mm-hmm.
Thank you both again so much for your time and sharing all this stuff. We transcribe everything, so we may come back to you with questions about like names and maybe some links for our resources, a page like that. So so maybe just watch out for that.
Sounds good. We're thrilled to be here. It's great to get this, and I think your guys' project is really awesome. So we're very excited.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're super glad to have you.
Thanks for inviting us.
Is there anything else you want to say, or do you have questions about how anything's going to run? Or we can definitely just, call it the hour if you prefer. But I'm available if you want to talk about anything else also.
Yeah, I don't think I have any questions right now. We may come back with questions later.
That is true.
Anytime. Okay.
All right. Thank you, guys.
Thanks a lot. You guys have a great day.
You too.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.